He was born in London and then lived for 19 years in Brazil. He later moved to the United States and became a U.S. citizen. Dr. Araujo has his Ph.D. in English literature from the University of Washington and has taught at several universities in the United States. He has been a Baha'i since 1946. The positions he has held include as a member of the Executive Committee for Non-Governmental Organizations at the United Nations Department of Public Information, Vice Chairman, Executive Committee for NGOs at the UN Department of Public Information, Chairman, Executive Committee for NGOs at the United Nations Department of Public Information, and Chairman, NGOs Committee of UNICEF. Presently, and since 1967, he has been the representative of the Baha'i international community to the United Nations. Tonight, Dr. Araujo is going to speak on the Baha'i commitment to unity and peace. Dr. Araujo.
Madam Chairperson, friends, I wish I had a few of the jokes that Mr. Matthews had and to liven things up a bit, but I'm afraid the Baha'i commitment to unity and peace is a rather serious matter, and you may be in for some serious thoughts. Thank you. I'd like to first talk a little about the Baha'i commitment to unity and peace, and then discuss briefly some groups of people who can make tremendous contributions to bringing about world peace. And these are youth, the young people, women, and children. As you know, a perusal of the writings of the Baha'i faith will provide overwhelming evidence of the Baha'i commitment to unity and peace. Whether we consider the principle of the oneness or unity of God, the oneness of religion, or the unity of mankind, we find in the Baha'i writings a full examination of the nature and dimensions of unity, the need for the realization of a true all-embracing unity. Limited unities of race, language, nationality, for instance, as you know, although important, are inadequate by themselves to solve the global problems of our age. And in the Baha'i writings, we find also extensive exhortations to achieve this ultimate aim of the human race, leading to personal and social peace and the creation of a unique world society and civilization. The Baha'i writings also bear comprehensive evidence to the Baha'i concern for peace, its essential elements, and the stages of its unfoldment. A top-down, pragmatic political peace, lesser peace, brought about by agreement of governments, to a lasting, bottom-up, political, economic, social, cultural peace with a moral and spiritual foundation, the most great peace, rising from a re-educated humanity, having fully internalized moral and spiritual values of love, compassion, justice, trust, and no longer blinded by prejudices stemming from nationality, religion, class, or sex. The teachings of the Baha'i faith reveal that unity and peace are a part of a divine plan unfolded gradually through the major world religions, and more specifically revealed through the Baha'i faith, born in 1844 in Iran, the most recent stage in the unfoldment of religious truth, linked clearly, as would be natural, to earlier revealed religions, their aspirations and promises. To achieve unity and peace, the source or root of human happiness, which the peoples of the world consciously or unconsciously yearn for, man-made solutions, though making significant strides since the turn of the century, have, it is quite evident, proved inadequate, since they lack not only the all-encompassing vision, but also the suprahuman power needed to recreate and motivate human nature and behavior, the basic building block for human and social happiness, and that harmonious world society which will culminate in a world civilization expressing fully, at last, the, quote, excellent qualities with which humanity has been endowed, end of quote. The Baha'i international community, or Baha'i world community, has in the last few months had the opportunity to explore the Baha'i commitment to unity and peace at a series of regional UN International Year of Peace seminars on such topics as preparation for life in peace, peace and disarmament, and peace and development. There were 4 of these seminars, one for each major region of the world, and we participated in all of them and made a total of 5 statements on different dimensions of peace. I shall share with you some of the observations made, since they are both pertinent to the subject of this paper, as well as an indication of the concern of Baha'i communities everywhere for the goals of the United Nations Charter, world peace, universal human rights, and the full economic and social development of the world's peoples, once again being brought into focus during IYP in an attempt to galvanize the governments and peoples of the world to bring about world unity and peace. When the Baha'i international community addressed the second special session of the United Nations General Assembly devoted to disarmament, this was on 24 June 1982, it expressed the Baha'i belief that the peace and security of humanity could not be achieved until unity had been fully established. Quote, "These words speak to our times. They speak to the dual obligation which must be met by each person, whether governing or governed, if we are to achieve world disarmament and human happiness in a world at peace. First, the responsibility to establish unity within self and among ourselves. Then, to build a world society and bring about world order and a world civilization." The statement mentioned in addition the Baha'i view that a world society in peace could only come about if human beings understood their true nature, spiritual, and the purpose for which they were created, to know and to worship God, and to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And it stressed that the concept of unlimited unity was at the center of this new stage in the life of the planet, adding that, and I quote, "The root principle of unity is, we believe, an understanding of the true identity of the human being. This seems to be the paramount need in the world, the attainment of unity through an awareness of our true reality, our nobility as human beings. This means a reawakened realization of our connection with God. This link is, quote, the strong cord that none can sever, unquote. And this identity of dependence, once fully integrated, can then be expressed successfully in a spirit of service to humanity." As we approach International Year of Peace, it has become quite evident that this planet Earth is one world and that the human race is one people. Abdul Baha, son of Baha'u'llah, founder of the Baha'i faith, saw this truth most clearly when in the first quarter of this century he discussed the 7 kinds of unity that should be achieved before we as human beings could have happiness. Unity in the political realm, unity of thought in world undertakings, unity in freedom, unity in religion, unity of nations, unity of races, and unity of language. Abdu'l-Baha noted that in cycles gone by, though harmony was established, yet owing to the absence of means, the unity of all mankind could not have been achieved. But now, through the revolution in communication, the continents were one, and, quote, the members of the human family, whether peoples or governments, cities or villages, had become increasingly interdependent. Further, the self-sufficiency was no longer possible for anyone, and that since political ties united, quote, all peoples and nations, unquote, and every day, quote, the bonds of trade and industry, of agriculture and education, unquote, were being strengthened, quote, unity of all mankind was now possible. Abdu'l-Baha viewed this century as one in which, and I quote, minds have developed, perceptions have become acute, sciences and arts are widespread, and capacity exists for the proclamation and promulgation of the real and ultimate unity of mankind, which will bring forth marvelous results. It will reconcile all religions, make warring nations loving, cause hostile kings to become friendly, and bring peace and happiness to the human world. It is the Baha'i view that the spiritual law of unity is the key and hallmark for this age and cannot be resisted. That as we suffer the consequences when we do not obey a physical law, the same will happen if we ignore or reject a spiritual law, this spiritual law of unity. In this context, it is worthwhile noting that the 4th candle of unity mentioned by Abdu'l-Baha, unity in religion, is mentioned as the, quote, cornerstone of the foundation itself, unquote. And if I had time, I would like to discuss with you the other unities talked about by Abdu'l-Baha, especially in light of how many of these are partially achieved today through efforts of the United Nations. Certainly, to give an example, unity in freedom, the number of territories in the world, of colonial countries or colonies that have become independent since the beginning of the United Nations in 1945 is amazing. From 51 nations in the UN, now you have 159. Most of these are countries that became independent since the founding of the UN. That's just one of the illustrations of these candles of unity being gradually unfolded, because the spirit of the age is a spirit of unity of humanity, and this is all pervasive. But getting back to the cornerstone, as we reassess the value of religion in our times, we will be able to see that the holy writings are the source of fundamental human education and development, of the knowledge and values that have throughout the history of humanity clarified the central aim of the human being, which I mentioned earlier, and revealed the true identity of the person as an agent expressing, through his or her relationship to the Creator, an attitude of love and service to humanity as a whole. If we examine the Baha'i communities around the world in more than 160 independent countries, we already see the impact of a renewal and expansion of religious truth and teachings containing the guidance for humanity at this stage of the unification of the human race. For in the Baha'i world community, uniting peoples, as you know, of the most varied backgrounds, we can note the early implementation of those spiritual and moral values, principles, and laws needed to enable each person to change himself and working with his fellow beings to create that kind of world society described in the Baha'i writings as a, quote, system in which force is made the servant of justice, unquote. I'd like now to make some comments on the important contribution that three groups of people, certainly not the most highly regarded in our world, can and must make for the unfoldment of world peace: youth, women, and children. The involvement of the Baha'i international community at the UN with efforts to give greater opportunities to these neglected groups of human beings so that they can participate in plans to build a world of peace and prosperity, our involvement has indeed been most rewarding. And the Baha'i cooperation is gaining increased recognition at the UN for its sincerity, its perseverance, and the clear-cut evidence of the transformation occurring in the Baha'i world community itself, where youth, women, and children enjoy full opportunities for involvement in the affairs of Baha'i communities. Youth, with its idealism and energy, its creativity and drive, can contribute significantly to speeding up the process of establishing universal peace. And it's quite clear that the Baha'i youth around the world have become deeply involved in activities during International Year of Youth, and this will go beyond. But there has been a momentum, and of course under the guidance of the Universal House of Justice, the governing body of the Baha'i world. Young people can not only be seized with the vision of a world society incorporating the rich diversity of human characteristics and cultures, but also play a most valuable role in achieving world unity and peace. In the statement the Baha'i International Community made to the recent IYP seminar for Asia and the Pacific in Bangkok on the subject of preparation for life in peace, we suggested three ways in which youth could better bring about a lasting peace and build a unique world civilization. The proposals of the Baha'i International Community were based on the path that Baha'i youth from over 2,000 ethnic backgrounds in more than 160 independent countries are clearly most fruitfully following, changing themselves and their societies. Youth can contribute, one, by developing an understanding and conviction of the principle of the organic oneness of humanity, and by expressing this belief through action. Two, by working for a systematic eradication of all forms of prejudice and discrimination, whether based on race, religion, sex, nationality, or class. Three, by a commitment to education in its totality, spiritual, moral, intellectual, emotional, and physical, education of the whole person. This can be done in two ways, and I quote from the Baha'i statement to the IYP seminar. First, through the development of the highest moral and spiritual values taught in the Baha'i writings and in the scriptures of earlier revealed religions. Among them, qualities of love, compassion, justice, truthfulness, honesty, trustworthiness, and courtesy. These qualities, essential for the molding of character, must be internalized and be expressed in daily action, whether in the context of family, community, country, or the world at large. This education must necessarily stem from acceptance of and commitment to the organic oneness of the human race, and the belief that all human beings are fundamentally spiritual in nature and have the responsibility to express their love of God through service to their fellow beings. I was very interested in listening to Mr. Matthews talk about the youth in service to humanity, because all of us are committed to service of humanity, but should be, but the energy of youth and the enthusiasm can make vast difference in conditions in the world in the years to come. The second way in which education can be achieved is through, of course, training in schools to develop fully the individual's talents, abilities, potentials in such a way that young people are equipped to practice a trade or profession and can, through gainful employment, contribute to the development of their nation and of the world. Special emphasis must also be given, and we made this point strongly, in the Baha'i view, to the often neglected education of female youth. In addition, the experience of Baha'i communities indicates that the education and training of youth must rest on a clear understanding of the essential agreement between science and religion as facets of one truth, providing the values, knowledge, and information that can change the planet into a place of peace and harmony, through respect for the rich diversity of humanity and the nourishing of those cultural differences that bring us together instead of tearing us apart. From the Baha'i perspective, however, what matters essentially is an acceptance of the common humanity we share, that we are a divine creation connected by indissoluble ties with the creator of the universe. It is the vision of world peace as more than a possibility that has stimulated Baha'i youth during International Youth Year to express in numerous ways in Baha'i communities and in cooperation with other individuals and groups in projects and conferences as well as in daily action, their optimism. It is, you might say, the brilliant light at the end of the tunnel, glimpsed in the following view from the Baha'i writings, that we hope will challenge all young people to build a better world. The world community, a world community in which all economic barriers will have been permanently demolished, and interdependence of capital and labor definitely recognized, in which the clamor of religious fanaticism and strife will have been forever stilled, in which the flame of racial animosity will have been finally extinguished. And the passage ends up, such indeed appears in its broadest outline the order anticipated by Baha'u'llah, an order that shall come to be regarded as the fairest fruit of a slowly maturing age. The recent participation of the Baha'i international community in the UN World Conference to conclude the UN Decade for Women was another opportunity to bring the Baha'i concern for women to the attention of delegates from all over the world, especially in a report circulated as an official document. You might like the title A/Conference 116/NGO3. Went around officially. I would like to share with you how some of the comments contained in this document that reflect the results of our findings on the advancement of women in Baha'i communities and the contribution that such advances in the equality of men and women already are making to the essential involvement of women in bringing about world peace. And this is interesting. We sent out a questionnaire asking Baha'i communities questions such as, there were three questions. One was, what do you consider to be the obstacles to the advancement of women? What have been the obstacles that your Baha'i communities have found? What have your communities done during the UN Decade for Women to advance the condition of women? And third, what are your plans beyond the decade? One of the passages says the responses. We had incidentally submitted this kind of questionnaire in 1973 to the United Nations before the first Women's Conference in Mexico City. Here we mentioned the responses received from both the 73 and 83 questionnaires confirm the necessity for the change in attitudes. That's crucial, emphasized by the United Nations, as well as stressing the importance of education for the realization of the equality of men and women. They also indicate that Baha'i communities are engaged in many innovative activities to foster the advancement of women, while maintaining unity in the family and in the community, conditions essential in the Baha'i view for healthy progress in bringing about the equality of the sexes. Then we went on to say Baha'i communities, while realistic in the assessment of obstacles to be overcome, are dedicated to a change in attitudes and are working systematically and in a practical way to win the goal of equality of the sexes. They are dedicated to the education of women, even in preference to that of men, since women as mothers have such an important bearing on the life of future generations. In addition, they see the importance of women's potential for the accomplishment of peace and world order as women increasingly participate in all areas of community life. Then we went on to say that it should be pointed out that all individual Baha'is and Baha'i institutions are committed to the belief that the teachings of their faith are invested with divine authority, and that the principles of these teachings are the guidance towards which they continually turn for new insight and understanding. It is inevitable at this time in the history of the Baha'i world community that there are wide differences in the understanding as well as in the application of these principles, and that the full appreciation of their significance and their demonstration in action, and I think that's important because nothing happens overnight, and this important central Baha'i principle will naturally be implemented only gradually, and that the full appreciation of their significance and their demonstration in action are dependent upon many factors in the life of the individual and in society. Baha'i communities, although very different one from another, since they include a wide diversity of cultural backgrounds, are also very similar. They express a unique unity in diversity, unity in that all accept Baha'u'llah, the founder of their faith, as a divine prophet for this period in human history, and are committed to the world view, principles, and laws he has brought. Diversity in that they are an unusual blend of nationalities, races, creeds, classes, and temperaments, all welcomed and appreciated in the Baha'i faith and its world community. This is what we had to share with the UN. In evaluating the contribution that women in the worldwide Baha'i community had made during the UN decade, 76 to 85, the report indicated that the most frequently mentioned positive influence for the integration of women in community life has been the administrative order. And this is, I think, a very interesting point. Why this should be so lies in the nature of the Baha'i administrative structure, encouraging universal participation in consultation and decision-making in the smallest community on up. The report clarified an important element of this system is an election process by secret ballot, free from the practice of nominations and electioneering. Members of the local community elect by free choice those men and women they feel are best qualified to make decisions on a whole range of human concerns. The members are asked, quote, to consider without the least trace of passion and prejudice and irrespective of any material consideration the names of only those who can best combine the necessary qualities of unquestioned loyalty, of selfless devotion, of a well-trained mind, of recognized ability and mature experience, unquote. Then we went on to say the elected administrative council regularly consults with all members of the community at large, drawing from the diversity of viewpoints that necessarily exists in every situation. Once decisions of the council are reached by unanimous or majority vote, everyone in the community is committed to uphold them, ensuring in this way the unified support of the community at large. This joint decision-making process eliminates the evils of political partisanship that seek to undermine a plan of action and prevents the influence of pressure groups promoting special interests. And that's because it was important to explain why what there was in the Baha'i administrative system that was already having an impact on the advancement of women in Baha'i communities. In a statement entitled The Spiritual Basis of Equality, this was also a statement we prepared for the Nairobi conference and its parallel forum, it was made quite clear that no longer can the contribution of women to development of the planet be neglected as it has in the past, since, quote, fundamental to the Baha'i view is the concept of the oneness and wholeness of the human race, of which the equality of men and women is a vital and clearly stated spiritual and social principle conducive to personal integration and social cohesion. On the matter of the women, contribution of women to peace, in the Baha'i International Community Statement to the IYP Seminar for Europe in Vienna, it was stressed that, quote, only with the full participation of women in the affairs of the planet could world peace be brought into existence, and the key to this essential involvement of women in the establishment of world order will be the provision of education for every human being, regardless of sex, race, nationality, class, or religion. And we suggested that the IYP, for instance, should fully explore ways and recommend action that would bring about this fair balance of education for boys and girls in the family, in the community, and the nation, something that is not happening in the world today. Well, not only is the participation of women as mothers and parents crucial to develop the proper qualities in children to become agents for peace, and this is something to think about carefully. The children are not only recipients, as we noticed this evening so wonderfully, but they are agents for peace. They are not just recipients of help or protection, but more than that. But the influence of women in the affairs of the world through their participation in all areas of activity in a full and equal footing with men is also an essential element to make war once and forever obsolete. Finally, the Baha'i International Community expressed the hope that women could help reverse, quote, a prevalent philosophy of life, one that assumes that human beings are captives of the material world. If instead women and men could promote, quote, a philosophy based on the nobility of human beings and on the development of their higher spiritual nature, a rapid transformation of society might be possible. This world, as mentioned in the Baha'i statement to the Committee on the Status of Women, in the statement we said this would ensure the development of moral and spiritual values which are so essential if education is to promote peace. It would help to bring about the equality of the sexes, cementing the partnership which must exist between men and women. It would lessen the competitiveness and struggle for power between warring groups seeking to exercise dominance over others. And finally, it would make possible the building of an effective system of collective security to maintain peace among states. For in a united world, no aggressor nation could destroy any other, since all other countries would act in unison through an international agency to prevent that aggression. I would like to talk to you, but there absolutely is no time on children, because I think that this is a very important element. The work of the Baha'i International Community with UNICEF keeps growing. We are we are already beginning to have joint programs with UNICEF. The radio station the Baha'i radio station in Bolivia, for instance, is working closely with UNICEF to disseminate information dealing with the spiritual survival and revolution of children, immunization, breastfeeding, oral rehydration therapy, and so forth. And this is a very exciting beginning of a very strong cooperation, which in the years ahead will develop, because UNICEF realizes the commitment of Baha'is everywhere to peace. I would like to conclude with a passage from the Baha'i writings dealing with the achievement of peace. It is a passage found in a work that was published in 1875, written in 1875 by Abdul Baha, and it is amazing how pertinent it is to conditions in our world today. And it deals with the unfoldment of true civilization. I'll read a couple of passages in conclusion. True civilization will unfurl its banner in the midmost heart of the world, whenever a certain number of its distinguished and high-minded sovereigns, the shining exemplars of devotion and determination, shall, for the good and happiness of all mankind, arise with firm resolve and clear vision to establish the cause of universal peace. They must make the cause of peace the object of general consultation, and seek by every means in their power to establish a union of the nations of the world. They must conclude a binding treaty and establish a covenant, the provisions of which shall be sound, inviolable, and definite. They must proclaim it to all the world and obtain for it the sanction of all the human race. This supreme and noble undertaking, the real source of the peace and well-being of the world, should be regarded as sacred by all that dwell on earth. All the forces of humanity must be mobilized to ensure the stability and permanence of this most great covenant. In this all-embracing pact, the limits of frontiers of each and every nation should be clearly fixed, the principles underlying the relations of government towards one another definitely laid down, and all international agreements and obligations ascertained. And the statement of Abdul Baha ends in this way. A few, unaware of the power latent in human endeavor, consider this matter as highly impracticable, nay, even beyond the scope of man's utmost efforts. Such is not the case, however. On the contrary, thanks to the unfailing grace of God, the loving kindness of His favored ones, the unrivaled endeavors of wise and capable souls, and the thoughts and ideas of the peerless leaders of this age, nothing whatsoever can be regarded as unattainable. Endeavor, ceaseless endeavor is required. Nothing short of an indomitable determination can possibly achieve it. Many a cause which past ages have regarded as purely visionary, yet in this day has become most easy and practicable. Why should this most great and lofty cause, the day star of the firmament of true civilization, and the cause of the glory, the advancement, the well-being, and the success of all humanity, be regarded as impossible of achievement? Surely the day will come when its beauteous light shall shed illumination upon the assemblage of man.